Hello, Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Brian Clinton, and Bennett Clinton enthusiasts. People who have been hitting the panic button nonstop since Saturday about the state of Oklahoma football and specifically the offense. This is probably the podcast for you. This is another episode of The Oklahoma Drill, a podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. I am Jesse Crittenden, and I am joined, as always, no matter, he's like a mailman. Sleet, ice, rain, snow, the other elements. Brian is here with me every week. Brian, how are you, sir?
Great. I'm doing good, man.
You've got some positive news to share.
I do. Bennett is supposed to come home on Monday. As long as, yeah, it's exciting. We're excited to get him home. As long as things go well over the weekend, he should be able to come home on Monday, and we'll all be under the same roof. So, excited about that, and ready to get him back here and start teaching him ways. So, well. Speaking of the mailman, I'm still waiting on my shirt to come in.
Shoot! I meant to mention that to our drummer Alex to get you a Brujo shirt. You got to remind me. I'll forget.
I will.
Anything and everything.
It'll be a thing. Actually, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't remind you. Maybe it should just be a weekly thing on the podcast. We'll see how it goes.
It'll go on forever if my only time I'm reminded is on the pod. Because by the time we get 10 minutes into this, I'll forget.
Yeah.
Seriously. Hey, you told me you had a surprise or you didn't want to say something before we started recording.
That's what it was.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. I wanted to know where my t-shirt was.
Embarrassing me.
I'm trying to rep you. I'm trying to rep Brujo, but
I appreciate. Well, could I get a onesie for Bennett too? Get you guys a father-son Brujo.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. I think that would be the first Brujo onesie that we've made.
Hey, trendsetters.
So, making history. Well, obviously, great news about Bennett. I know I can't imagine how tough the last few weeks have been, but we read the comments from everybody in last week's video. We appreciate everybody that wish you guys thoughts and prayers and everything. You guys have been really supportive, and I know, Brian, I know you guys appreciate that. I appreciate that. So fingers crossed everything keeps progressing and he's home on Monday. Also fingers crossed that for Oklahoma's sake, that they progress a lot more than they did from Houston from that Saturday game. And this is what we get, Brian, we barely even talked about Houston last weekend. OU was a 28-point favorite. I just assumed that game was not going to be close. Guess what it was? It was close. 4 points, actually. And OU's offense didn't score the last 8 drives of the game. So this has been talked about to death. We're recording this on Wednesday. And speaking of everybody's thoughts and prayers and everybody's feedback and all those good things, we figured we'd take a little bit more feedback from our loyal viewers here on YouTube, our on Spotify, and also the loyal members over at OU Insider VIP, the VIP board. I asked for hot takes from the members there about this team. Could be about a player, could be about an offense or a defense or the special teams. I asked for hot takes because I wanted to see after a few days how the fan base and how the members at OU Insider VIP are feeling. I've answered a ton of them in a midweek mailbag that I actually just published about an hour ago. So if you want to see the full slate of things, you guys can go over to ouinsider.com, check out that midweek mailbag. But Brian, I thought for fun, we could read off a couple of those hot takes here on the pod. We haven't done a ton of feedback from the viewers. This would be a good way to do that, get a pulse of how everyone's feeling. And Brian, you haven't seen any of these hot takes. You don't know what I'm about to throw at you. You don't know what the OU VIP members, OU Insider VIP members, are about to throw at you. We figured this is a way not only to get a pulse of the people, but also talk about what people are concerned about, how people are feeling. So, Brian, I'm going to start off, and I'm going to throw you three or four that are going to be kind of all over the place.
Okay.
And I've already answered them, so I'm going to give you first dibs at answering them. I'm going to read it. You tell me your response to the hot take that I read. The first one I'm going to give you is, oh, sorry, I had it up here. Okay, here it is. Jackson throws for over 300 yards against Tulane. The fan base collectively pulls a 180, and we are feeling cautiously optimistic again heading into conference play. That is from user college football is still fun. Brian, your take, your response, go.
Man, starting off tough here. Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't agree with it wholeheartedly. Um, if I did, I would just be one, I would be labeled a sunshine pumper, but um, which is not what I'm calling the person that sent this in. I'm just digging myself a deeper hole here. The the reality of it is, I think if Oklahoma is going to find success offensively right now, it's going to have to be with the running game being a priority. And so I'm going into this game under the full assumption that that would be where I would really be putting all my proverbial eggs would be in the basket of running the football. Um, because if Jackson Arnold has to throw for over 300 yards, the game script probably isn't in Oklahoma's favor. And so on that note, I would say no, the fan base would not be would not be pulling a 180. They would have something to worry about on the defensive side of the ball. Honestly, I think there is an opportunity for Oklahoma to have some things get right in this game. Uh, you know, Brent Venables talked about it at ad nauseum in his press conference this week about how Houston got to play the game that it wanted to against the Sooners. It had ample opportunities to stay in the game. That's exactly what Willie Fritz it has made a living doing. That's how he built Tulane into what it is now, and it's I mean, really the premier Group of Five program in the country right now. Uh, I think that there are ways that Oklahoma could get things started off on a better foot, and the entire game goes differently. But at the end of the day, I don't see Jackson Arnold going for over 300 yards passing this game. If he does, it would be fantastic because that probably means he got a couple of familiar faces back, a couple of familiar targets back. But uh, I don't see the fan base. It's funny how the fan base at Oklahoma works. There's so much passion. If you were to beat Tulane handedly, the same people that were saying that they were scared going into the game would say, well, that's what they're supposed to do. And in the same on the same token, if they were to lose to Tulane, those same people would be flipping tables over. So that's just kind of how it works. I don't agree with that one, but I am optimistic still. I do think there will be some things in this game that Oklahoma's able to get right and have some confidence at least going into the game against Tennessee.
Well, I'll say this, and I've had the benefit of reading these ahead of time. This is what I'll say. If Jackson Arnold's going to throw for over 300 yards, two things have to happen. One, they need Nick Anderson and Angelo Anthony on the field. They just do. He's not getting there without both those guys on the field. Nick Anderson is quote unquote hopeful, or Brent Venables is hopeful that Nick Anderson will play. He obviously hasn't played this year. He has been practicing this week. Brent said he looks good. Now, whether that means he'll play or not, I don't know. Angelo Anthony played like 8 snaps against Temple that didn't play last weekend, and that was notable because OU needed him. They needed someone who can do what he does.
Yeah.
And the reality is, through 2 weeks, Jackson Arnold has 314 passing yards. 314. He threw for 174 against against Houston. And when you look at the receivers that OU played against Houston, it's you've got a bunch of fast, speedy, quick guys. But outside of JJ Hester, nobody that offers size. And JJ Hester barely played.
Yep. And when he did get opportunities, he wasn't able to capitalize.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And so two things need to happen. One, the wide receiver room needs to get healthier. And two, they've got to not only be willing to throw the ball downfield more, but they've got to have more success when they do it. Jackson through 2 weeks is 2 of 10 on passes of 20 yards or more. 2 of 10. Both numbers should stand out. The number of attempts should stand out, and the number of completions should stand out. Now, look, they beat Temple by 1,000,000 points, but they needed downfield. I mean, they didn't flash anything against Temple. They needed it against Houston. It wasn't there. OU had 2 plays of 15 yards or more against Houston. 2. So I don't think it's impossible. Jackson's a 5-star quarterback in part because he has a massive arm, and that's what he showed at Geyer High School. But they're not throwing the ball downfield right now, and they don't have the receivers to go down the field if they were to throw it. And Jackson isn't throwing it accurately when he does throw it downfield.
Well, and on top of that, the play from the offensive line hasn't really given him a lot of confidence to be able to hold the ball long enough for those things to develop downfield. Now, in his defense, or in the offensive line's defense, really, it's been a revolving door because of injuries. Like, you just haven't had the same guys. I mean, Michael Tarquin went from left tackle to right tackle. You had guys all over the place. And so it's been tough, and it was better. Like it was after going back and watching the Houston game a second time, focusing on the offensive line. The pass protection was better, but you could still tell that internal clock for Jackson is a little fast on the trigger. And so that'll come with time, and as that group gets a little more familiar with one another. But yeah, the downfield passing game, in the grand scheme of things, that's what's limited Oklahoma's offense. Because if you don't have a vertical passing game, safeties are able to come down in the box and help in run fits, and if there's no threat over the top, you can't run the football. And it's a numbers game at the end of all of it. So good point.
Well, and the other thing to highlight real quick is that Tulane through 2 weeks has given up 280 passing yards. 280. So that's not to say Tulane is a defensive juggernaut. I don't think they are, but they played Kansas State pretty damn well last weekend and probably could have won that game. And they haven't given up a ton through the passing game. So
yeah,
there's a little bit of an uphill battle for Arnold to get to that mark. Okay, but this is another hot take that is the hottest of hot takes. Not because I think it's impossible, but this is not only a hot take, but it's also the complete opposite of the take I just read. This is from at Jesse Dyer 33. Hot
Your
take.
burner.
Huh?
Your burner account?
Yeah, this is, yep. Actually, if it was my burner, it would be 31, not 33, as the real ones now. Hot take. Michael Hawkins will be the team's starter come Red River. Hot.
Dang.
Now, this is more to highlight how many different. We've got some people who are like, Jackson's going to bounce back and be great this weekend. We've got some that are like, it's over. It's donezo after 2 weeks. Now, I have thoughts about this, but this is the first time you're hearing this take. Hit me with it. What are you thinking?
What I'm thinking is I better choose my words carefully here. The last time Oklahoma won a game scoring 16 points It was exactly 16 points, if I remember correctly. It was against West Virginia in 2021.
21.
And that is also the last time that we had a 5-star incumbent starter um, kind of getting the malice of the fan base because a talented guy behind him was making some noise. Now, in that particular instance, it was Caleb Williams, um, who, I mean, we all know where he ended up, what he ended up being. And not to say that Michael Hawkins isn't going to be an incredible player at Oklahoma. I mean, I think he has that ability. I just think it's so. This is. I'm just gonna say it. This is kind of a lazy take or a lazy thought process. Um, because at least from my seat, it's so easy to blame a quarterback. It's very easy to blame a quarterback from a fan perspective because that's the guy you've been you've been told, you've seen, you've heard, the media's told you that the quarterback is what wins and loses the games for you, which they are the most important player on the offensive side of the ball, bar none. It's that they touch the ball every play. Um, that they are going to be the one that distributes the ball to the playmakers. They make the decisions, they make the checks. They are the field general, like all those superlatives. That's important. But there are 10 other guys on the field at all times with a quarterback. And I would be very surprised if there was more than like 20% or 25% of the snaps of Oklahoma's games where the same 10 guys have been on the field with Jackson Arnold in this 2-game stretch. Like there just hasn't been that much continuity. And I think that would be difficult for anyone at quarterback, let alone a guy that's making his fourth start this week as a collegiate player. No matter how talented he is. Dillon Gabriel, if he was in the same spot, would Oklahoma have scored more points than they did last week? Yes, probably because Dillon Gabriel has been running the RPO since Jackson Arnold was in diapers. But like I think the point I'm trying to make here is if you're ready to pull the trigger and go to quarterback number 2 already, there's just so many more things that are going on besides Jackson Arnold being the main issue. This goes back to the same issue that you had a few years ago with the fan base. Last time you ended up having a guy that was a complete difference maker, and for that team, he did elevate what Oklahoma was able to do. But I think with that case, you at least had a 2020 season full of seeing what Spencer Rattler was able to do. It's just too early to pull Jackson Arnold and go a different route.
Well, this is what I'll say. For one, I asked for hot takes, and he gave me a hot take, or they gave me a hot take.
Yep,
that's
fair.
That's
so
one.
so, so
that's
yeah.
one.
So I apologize
for they asked
too aggressive.
I'll say this. I completely understand why fans are frustrated.
Yes.
That game against Houston is like there's bad offense and then there's unacceptable offense. And that's
especially at a place like Oklahoma.
Yeah, against a really bad team. Houston is really bad. Houston's really bad. And the reality is that Jackson is a true sophomore, but he asked for this. He wanted this. This is why he came to Oklahoma.
Yep.
He wanted this. And outside of OU actually losing one of these 2 games, which who knows if they don't get the phantom muffed punt. I'm pretty sure Houston did not touch that punt in the first quarter. Who knows if that doesn't happen. But aside from actually losing one of those 2 games, this is about the worst start. This is the nightmare start. Not only that the offenses look bad, but the injuries have piled up.
Yep.
So there's a lot of ways to attack this. One, there is nothing more appealing to a fan base of a team that's struggling than the backup quarterback. It is a tale as old as time. We were just doing this last year with Dylan Gabriel and Jackson Arnold, ironically. I'll say this, and I've heard the Caleb Williams thing a lot. This is what I tell people, and this is not to throw shade at Caleb Williams at all, who was and is a fantastic quarterback. He struggled a lot when he became the starter in 21.
Yep.
Go look at the game logs. Yep. Watch the games. He had less than 100 passing yards against Iowa State at home after they got throttled by Baylor when the offense looked awful and Caleb Williams got benched. Now, look, that season was weird. Lincoln Riley, that's a whole other discussion. Caleb won the Texas game. He was incredible. He was never that good the rest of the year. He was bad against a really bad Iowa State team that year. OU probably doesn't win that game if they don't get a scoop and score from Jalen Redmond.
Yep.
They were down 10-0 against Kansas at halftime. That Kansas team was bad. Like, really bad. I can't remember what they went that year, but that was the year before things started to trend up for them. Yes. I think they won 3 games that year. Two
or three. Yeah, you're right. It was 3 max.
They were down 10-0 at half.
I think they were 2-10.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
And so that's what happens. And Caleb Williams isn't a normal quarterback. He was never going to be a normal quarterback. But when you insert a true freshman who starts the year as the backup into the game, like into this, like as the starter, like it's you, like there's a reason why backups are usually backups. And we just have not seen a big enough sample size for Jackson. We just haven't. And basically, we came into the year and I tried to say that, like, this is essentially the hardest situation an OU quarterback has walked into this century in terms of he's a true sophomore with 1 career start, different offensive coordinator who isn't the guy that recruited him here, brand new offensive line, first year in the SEC, and now you're walking in 4 of the team's 5 top receivers didn't play on Saturday. 4 of them. Offensive line is just devastated with injury. It looks like a team that has no cohesion. And when you think about it, that's exactly what it is. They don't have cohesion. They need more time to figure this out. Having said that, they don't have a ton of time. Tulane is not a bad football team. And having said all of that, they still should have played better than they did on Saturday. And if they lose this weekend and Jackson looks bad, the noise is only going to grow.
Yep.
It'll
be deafening. Yeah, it'll be deafening if Tulane comes into Norman and beats them.
And having said all that, Hawkins, I'm really high on Hawkins. People within the program are really high on him too.
Should be.
He should be. I'm not saying it's impossible. He's not the starter. If OU loses the next 3 games, it's probably a certainty that he's the starter. But as the first take said, if OU wins this weekend and looks dominant, it's a 180. It is. That's what's going to happen. Things will feel a lot differently if that's how this weekend goes.
Yep.
So let's just see what happens when this Tulane game happens. Let's just see what happens. If he struggles and OU barely wins or loses, then it's probably worth having more of a discussion. I don't think we're there yet.
What if he has 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and they win by 10 points?
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, it's not perfect, but throwing for 250 and they win by 10, let's assume in that scenario OU scores somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 points. You take that.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
You didn't have to be perfect. You don't need him to go out there and throw for 500 yards and no picks.
You have a defense that can win football games if your offense is struggling now.
You just need the offense to move the ball sometimes. And like
take a minute off the clock at least.
And like do stuff down the field. Like at all.
Yeah.
You don't need him to be Saturday was so bad.
It was.
Jackson was bad. The offensive line was bad. The skill positions were bad. The running game was horrific.
And the coaching would those guys, you could tell like they were frustrated with themselves.
Yeah.
at how things played out. And so I don't know. Yeah, I think I think everybody deserves a little bit of it, and they know that, and that's what they're going
Yeah.
to say, and it's the truth.
Throw a couple more at you.
Let's hear it.
Um, Love this one. Offense converts more than 50% on third down against Tulane. Now, given that OU is 5 for 26 on the year on third downs, considering they're 131st nationally in third down efficiency, they converted 19%. And considering that Tulane's defense, through it's just 2 games, of course, but and I mean Southeastern Louisiana and Kansas State, opponents are 6 of 11 on third downs. K-State was 2 of 10 last week. So
Hmm.
50 OU going 50% or better wouldn't just be a substantial improvement, but it would be impressive considering K-State's defense has been pretty good on third downs. The other thing to point out here is OU's average down and distance on third downs the first 2 weeks is like third and 8.8.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing nothing on early downs and then doing nothing on third and longs. What do you think, Brian? What's the chances they go 50% or better?
It honestly depends on who's available. Like it depends on who's available because if you have guys like Nick Anderson back who can stretch the field a little bit more, it really does just change the entire dynamic of the offense. It because you don't get the third down without first and second down, right? And like that changes who you have available, what you're able to do. Like it just changes everything. It's not I don't football's not this every play is on a whim. Like, yeah, let's run a draw play here because that's what we feel like's best to do on third and 11. It doesn't. That's not how the game works. But I'm gonna say this is the optimist in me. But with the offensive line, even if they are missing some guys this week, still, I think having another week after what we saw from them last week was better, especially in pass pro. I think with the offensive line, uh, having a little more cohesion with some of the wide receivers that are getting more reps now because there's been injuries piled up. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that Nick Anderson comes back. This is and totally just a guess. I have no idea. Um, I could see Oklahoma going over 50%. Um, if they do that, though, it's going to be because they find something in the running game that helps them set things up. I'm not saying that they're just all of a sudden going to become this explosive offense. I think it could be they find a way in the running game to uh, set themselves up and they make the most of their opportunities. But yeah, it wouldn't be like I don't expect it to be like a 18 of 21 or 8 or 15 of 18 situation. I could see it being like a they avoid it and go 5 of 10 or something. But we'll not, who knows?
I'm not going to go 50% as much as I love the optimism. Not going to go 50. That's just 50% would be really high.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking it's, I mean, also that take came from CMAT 3. Not going to go 50%. I'm going to say 35, which would be like about average,
Yeah.
a little below average.
Yeah.
35. But not great enough, not fantastic enough, but a push in the right direction.
Yep.
I'll say 35%. But
Yep.
your point about the running game goes into this last take I'm going to read here, and there's a ton I could read. But I like this one. I like this one a lot, and I like the discussion that we can have from it. And this is from Aggie Sooner. Hot take. O-line shows major improvement. Running backs get an average of 5+ yards collectively.
Mm.
Jackson Arnold stops trying so hard and throws some dimes. We've talked about Jackson Arnold. I think we can talk about the O-line and the running backs here. Now, here's the thing, Brian. The running back room has been bad as a collective. Gavin Sawchuk has 10 carries for 19 yards on the season. 10 carries for 19 yards. OU averaged 2.6 yards per carry against Houston. That is their lowest, ironically, since the West Virginia game you mentioned in 2021. And I mean, the snaps have been all over the place. I mean, Javante Barnes led the running backs with 46 against Houston. Sawchuk had 13 as the starter, had 13. And then Taylor Tatum, who's actually leading the team in rushing yards and yards per carry, I think he played 6 snaps, saw 1 carry, and I think he's already shown he's the most explosive running back in that room. Having said all that, Tulane's been susceptible to the running game already. If OU is going to beat, I mean, this is a team. I mean, they gave up 241 rushing, or sorry, excuse me, they gave up 102 rushing yards to Southeastern Louisiana last week to Kansas State. They gave up 215 rushing yards, over 6 yards a carry. That's where K-State had success. Mm-hmm. Brian, can the O-line show improvement, and can this running back room average 5 yards or better, 5 yards per carry or better against Tulane?
Yes.
Will they?
Yes to the first one. Okay. The massive improvements. I do think that the offensive line, as they kind of feel some things out, this is about the time when you find one or two things that really work for you. And that's going to be vital for Oklahoma to find something to hang its hat on. You have to have some sort of offensive identity at this point, which is just, it feels so crazy to be saying that about an Oklahoma football team, but that's really where they're at. So I look at what Kansas State did last week. DJ Giddens and Avery Johnson, and I think Dylan Edwards, the third, like those 3 guys, that's a really good tandem of running backs and a good running quarterback. And 215 yards for them is going to be that. I would imagine that's going to be pretty normal for that team this year. They have the weapons to do it. I think Oklahoma has the weapons to do it. It's just a matter of getting the offensive line healthy enough. I'm going to go yes on the improvements. I do think they figure some things out. I do think the offensive line play looks better. 5 yards though, a carry, like I would say maybe like 4.25 or 4.5 would be a good measuring. Like that would be a good movement in the right direction.
I was gonna say 4.2.
Yeah, 4.2. Yeah. 5 would be, wow, you really figured something out. Why did it take you 3 weeks to do it? Kind of thing. Like it would be just a magic trick almost at this point. But yeah, I think 4.2, 4.3, somewhere in that area, I think would be reasonable, and you could expect that, especially if the offensive line is looking a little bit better.
We'll see about the offensive line. Look, I mean, it's pretty clear heading into the weekend that Branson Hickman is questionable. Jake Taylor is questionable. Troy Everett is questionable. We know Garen Hatchett's out for the year. My personal gut, and I want to make this clear, I'm not reporting this. My guess is Jake Taylor. Of the three, I would guess that Troy Everett has the best chance to return this weekend. That's what I would say. I would be really surprised if Jake Taylor plays. I would be pretty surprised if Branson Hickman plays. I would be a little surprised if Troy Everett plays. That's where I'm at based on what I've heard. And if none of them play, it's gonna be Josh Bates at center again. And
which honestly, he catches a lot of flack, but he played well for his situation last week.
He played every snap.
Yeah.
Now, look, first play of the game was bad for him. And then the last offensive play of the game was bad for him.
Can't do that.
Can't do it. And I know there was some jawing. There was some stuff going on at Jackson Arnold. That unsportsmanlike conduct penalty OU was going to be able to run the clock out, or pretty much all the clock out, and it gave the ball back to Houston. It
was forgivable until the helmet came off.
Yep.
You can stand up for your quarterback. You can do all of that. But you've got to keep your composure. That is just That's one of those situations that if the depth situation were any better, he probably wouldn't see the field for quite some time. Just because, I mean, that's a bonehead play, man. You just can't do that.
The other question I have is, look, 6 offensive linemen got into the game on Saturday.
Hmm.
Jake Sexton, Michael Tarquin, Fabechi Wiwu, and Josh Bates played every snap.
Wow.
Jake Taylor and Logan Howland split the snaps at right tackle, and I'm pretty sure Howland only came in the game because Jake Taylor got hurt. I honestly think there's a world where if Jake Taylor doesn't get hurt, OU doesn't make a sub. I mean, that's just, I mean, that's the way it
Yeah.
seemed like it was going to happen to me.
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder, depending on what the health is, I wonder if we get a look at someone like Heath Ozida or Eddie Pierre Louis this weekend. Now, Brent said they're hoping to get Eddie Pierre Louis more integrated in the offense. They said they were hoping to play him more last weekend, which I took as that they were thinking they were going to be up by a lot more, and they weren't.
Yep.
And that's why that happened.
Yep.
And that's why he didn't play. But I think the main thing for me, though, Brian, is both of those guys primarily play guard.
Mm-hmm.
And Fabechi, who I think has been fine. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a good.
He's been fine.
Yeah.
He's played pretty much every snap at right guard. And it looks like Bill Bedenbaugh is pretty committed to playing Sexton at left guard and Tarquin at left tackle, which that's a whole other discussion because Tarquin's played a lot of left guard. And Sexton to me seems like a more comfortable or like more natural left tackle. That's a whole other discussion. I know there's been some questions even in the hot takes. There was somebody that asked, could we see more of EPL and Ozida? Like maybe, but they're either going to have to play tackle or they're going to have to give less snaps to Sexton or Fabechi. And to me, that seems unlikely.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah. I could see a situation where if one of those guys really starts to emerge, if they find something if they find a scheme or something that they like in their run game, which I'm talking without actually knowing what's going on with the offense right now. But if they find something that works with one of those guys in there, I mean, I liked what I saw from both of those guys against Temple. It was Temple. But you see some movement, a little more aggressive on some of the runs, and I could see a world where one of those guys is playing well enough down the stretch that you could bump Sexton out to tackle, because he is a better tackle than Tarquin is. That's not really a. I don't think I'm breaking news there. But at this point, to me, it seems like either A, Sexton has a better understanding of the offense because he's been in it longer than Tarquin does, and maybe that's why they have him at guard, because there's just naturally going to be more movement from a guard spot than there would be a tackle, or those guys that they play to each other's strengths with that lineup. Having a Sexton next to Josh Bates gives you two guys, or gives you a guy that can really get somebody off the ball if you're combo blocking. I mean, I have no idea, but I would say if Eddie Pierre Louis or Heath Ozida showed enough to get on the field, I could see them taking that left guard spot and pushing Sexton out to tackle.
I don't mind the idea.
Especially if you're in a situation where that allows Tarquin to play at right tackle if you're having some issues there.
Yeah.
The problem is you've got to find a group. You have, like, at this point, you are 10 days. We're recording here on the 11th. You are 10 days from welcoming Tennessee into Norman. And we still don't know what Oklahoma's hanging its offensive hat on, and we still don't know who the starting five or best five look like right now because it's just been so. I'm going to use the word cattywampus. Like I can't think of another word that just it's been crazy. Just trying to keep up with who's playing where on the offensive line. So sorry to go off on another tangent there, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the O line right now.
Want to thank everybody for throwing some hot takes
Good
our
stuff.
way. Yes, I
We need to do
really.
that some more.
No, me too. I had the idea this week, and I really liked the feedback I got, and from the people, from the subscribers over at OU Insider. So I might have to do this more often because I really like these takes. We're not always going to agree or disagree with all the takes, but
I won't always call you lazy, I promise. I'm sorry.
no, look. If they give hot takes, then we give hot responses.
There you go.
We're a couple hot guys.
Dad life.
Brian, we got to do stock up, stock down before we talk about Tulane this weekend in a game that all of a sudden looks really, really interesting. But before we do stock up and stock down, Brian, I got to tell you and folks at home about HelloFresh. What is HelloFresh? With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. We all know home cooked meals are so much better for you, but you don't always have time to pull it off. Brian, I know like the last few weeks have been crazy for you. Football season in general is crazy for both of us. Sometimes you got to look for something more efficient. You got to look for something easier. Got to look for something more convenient. HelloFresh can do that for you and also make the meals good for you. With HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table quick and painless. No more endless recipe searching or spending money on a whole jar of spices for only a pinch. With HelloFresh, everything you need to make delicious meals comes right to your door, pre-proportioned and fresh. Plus, it's included with step-by-step recipe cards to make the cooking simple. For free breakfast for life. That's free breakfast for life. Go to HelloFresh.com/free OU Insider. That's one free breakfast item per box while the subscription is active. That is free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/OU Insider, America's #1 meal kit. Brian, we've done stock up, stock down the first couple of weeks. We've only done stock ups, but I think we can probably throw a stock down for a couple of things this week. Doesn't always have to be players. And I'm going to go first, Brian, and take the plunge. I'm going to go with a stock up, and I'm going to say the Oklahoma defense. Stock up on the Oklahoma defense. Look, it's crazy that we're having discussions about the offense struggling. That's one. And two, that it's because the defense has been so good. Defense has been fantastic. Not perfect, not amazing. They had the broken play against Houston that led to a touchdown. Although Brent said that was on the coaching staff for not getting the signal into the players quicker. That's one. And two, that should have never happened because Woody Washington intercepted Donovan Smith the play before that, and it was a phantom pass interference call. But look, the defense has been expected to dominate. Houston and Temple's offenses aren't anything to write home about. Temple's offense is a lot better than both of those teams. But look,
Tulane's.
There's something to be said about expecting to dominate and then dominating. That has been far from a given with this defense. I think you've seen the potential at pretty much every position group. You've seen the depth. Guys like Grayson Halton, Robert Spears Jennings are taking that year 3 jump that we thought they could have since the spring. We've seen the impact of Dominic Williams. Danny Stutzman was fantastic against Houston, 15 tackles. I think the only thing really is Peyton Bowen didn't play the second half, really. He looked like he was injured. They got to get healthier. Kip Lewis left the game briefly. Robert Spears Jennings left the game briefly. They need to make sure they get healthy, and they're going to get really tested this weekend because Tulane has a better offense and a couple of guys that are really, really good that I think at least one of them has a chance to make an All-American team. The Oklahoma defense, stock is up. I mean, it'd be hard to ask for much more. They're not only being dominant, but they're making plays. Does OU win that game if Grayson Halton doesn't get the safety? I mean,
Who
maybe.
knows?
But after that first drive, I mean, Houston, look, again, not perfect. Houston had a crazy time of possession. They had a couple of drives that, kept OU's defense on the field for too long, but they're not just being dominant, Brian. They're making plays. I think the stock's up for the Oklahoma defense. Who is your stock up?
The tight end room.
I like it. I like it.
Tight end room. It's not we haven't seen it just absolutely take over, and obviously the offense is still having its issues, but I do like that, you've had a couple of touchdowns, one for each of those guys this season or through the two games so far. I think Jake Roberts had a huge game. I mean, all for all intents and purposes, it was a huge game for him because had he not scored his first touchdown as a Sooner, and had he not converted on a long catch on the pop pass from Arnold, which was a fantastic catch, by the way. Rough throw, great adjustment and catch. Um, Oklahoma's looking at a different game, probably. So I really like what I've seen from those guys. It's to me, the situation that you have there is just much better than it was last year, considering Austin Stogner, even hobbled, was out there and really the only guy you could trust out there at that position. But those two guys, plus kind of what we've seen from Cade McIntyre in limited play, and seeing Caden Helms on the field is just cool. On top of all of that, but from Bauer Sharp and Jake Roberts, I like where those guys are at. So I'll say stock up for the tight ends.
It's been cool to see not only a lot of 12 personnel, but we've even seen a couple 13 personnel.
Yep.
With McIntyre, Sharp, and Jake Roberts on the field at the same time. Guess who had the longest reception from Jackson Arnold on Saturday?
Jake Roberts.
Jake Roberts. Jake Roberts.
There you go.
And Roberts and Sharp, I think their two games have combined for 9 receptions for over 100 yards. So considering Jackson Arnold has 314 passing yards, it's a good chunk. Brian, I'm going to do a stock down. And look, this is not about writing off a player. This is not about saying they're terrible. This is not about saying they're not going to be better, because I actually expect this player that I'm going to mention to be better moving forward. Gavin Sawchuk, who I mentioned, same as yours.
Yep.
Well, that's why I went first, because I wanted to steal him from you. I'm not gonna belabor the point. I'm a believer in Gavin Sawchuk. Look, I said before the season, one of my predictions was that he was going to average, or that he was going to finish the year with over 1,300 rushing yards. I don't know if he's going to hit that, but I still believe in him. I think this offense just has all kinds of issues. I don't think Sawchuk looks comfortable. But again, 10 carries through 19 yards. For 19 yards, he's only played 39 snaps. It didn't look like OU could really keep him on the field against Houston. And the reality is, as exciting as Taylor Tatum is, and as much as Javonte Barnes has flashed a couple things here or there, this offense unequivocally, regardless of all of that, is at its best when Gavin Sawchuk is a real productive player for this team.
Yep.
So this is just a stock down in that it's been a pretty bizarre, slow start for him. And I honestly expect him to get back on track. That's my pick.
I like it.
If you don't have another stock down, you can tell me.
No. I think something I want to kind of add to that is there's only been three, as difficult as a time that Oklahoma's offense has had. There's only been three receptions by running backs this year, and they've all gone to Javonte Barnes, which is just odd because typically if you have offensive line issues, you're trying to get the ball out quickly to a running back in space. And that's kind of where you almost feel like Gavin Sawchuk would be a tool. Like that would be somebody that you would really want to get the football in space on the sideline. But yeah, as you mentioned, he ranks last on the team right now, 1.9 yards per carry. He just hasn't been able to do a whole lot with his opportunities. It's just been a slow start, and so it's been tough. I guess I think my stock down right now would have to be Brennan Thompson. As much as I hate to do that, look, coming out of fall camp, there was this buzz that he had just made this huge jump as a route runner and was a guy that was really a leader in that group. And not to say that he's not. It's really difficult uh, it's a difficult spot for the offense to be in, that your three guys that played the majority of your snaps at wide receiver all have the same body style or body type, and are being asked to do different things. That's just tough. And so, but Thompson just it seemed like they haven't really been able to get on the same page, he and Jackson Arnold, and I think that's really hurting the entire offense, because there is no vertical threat right now, and Oklahoma needs that. So, because you stole my first pick, I will take Brennan Thompson.
Surprised you didn't go Jackson Arnold as the easy pick, but I respect your pick because look, Brennan Thompson caught a touchdown off that muff punt. It was a big play, but I think you're seeing like he was not supposed to play this amount of snaps. I mean, he's playing out of necessity. Like, and Brent even said yesterday, which led credence to my prediction before Jaden Gibson got hurt, which was that he was going to be a starter. It was going to happen. He said Jaden Gibson took the majority of the snaps before he got hurt. Like Gibson at minimum, Gibson, Nick Anderson, Farouk, and Deion Burks are your top four. They're supposed to be when they're healthy. And I think Brennan Thompson can be a useful player. I think he can be a good utility player. I don't think he's supposed to be a 50 snaps a game guy like he has been through the first 2 weeks.
I just don't know that he can carry the load for you like that. That's tough. That's a lot to ask of a guy like that.
They're asking a lot of him. They're asking more than they want to ask of him. But look, again, it's still early, but that wide receiver room just needs to get healthy. And Brennan, I think, could be at his most effective at like 10 to 15 snaps a game.
Yeah.
I think that's where he could be effective. Most effective. Brian, let's talk about Tulane. It's a game 2:30 on Saturday. And I said before the year that I thought this could be a sneaky under the radar game for OU, a game that could push that might be the only game that could push them in the non-conference. And now all of a sudden it looks kind of scary. Now, betting purposes, OU is 14-point favorite. That's a significant favorite to win. It's going to be on ESPN or ESPN2. But the reality is, Brian, given how bad the offense looked last weekend, don't think you can take anything for granted against a Tulane team that barely lost to K-State last week, 34-27. And despite the loss, they outgained Kansas State by 100 yards. They were winning 20-10 at half. And I think you've seen now, for me personally, Brian, I have a personal attachment to Tulane, not only because they were one of my favorite teams growing up, but because I've led them to 2 college football playoffs in CFP 25. Mekhi Hughes, I won the Heisman with him my first year, and then I won the Heisman with Mario Williams second year. So Tulane's my team, but Mekhi Hughes is a guy, man, averaging over 5 yards a carry, and Darian Mensah, young guy at quarterback, but I mean, and you know, he had a costly pick against Kansas State, but Brian's got 550 passing yards on a year.
Yeah.
Completed 70% of his passes. That's just, they present a huge step up compared to what OU has seen. What are you looking for in this game? What's an area? I know we mentioned the running game, but what's an area you're going to be looking at heading into this weekend?
So when Tulane is on offense, and Coach Venables alluded to it in his press conference this week, that Tulane's an explosive team. They like to stretch the ball downfield. I believe he said they're averaging like 18 yards a catch or something as a team. I think if that is the game plan that they continue to stick with, which after what Houston was able to do, I would be surprised if they didn't have some kind of quick game to try and stretch OU a little bit horizontally. But if they do continue trying to press the ball downfield to guys like Mario Williams, I do think it benefits Oklahoma because I think your strengths right now are at safety and along the defensive line. So if you're having a quarterback that's going to drop back and let things develop downfield, I think that plays well into Oklahoma's hand um, in that matchup. Now, as far as running the ball, as you mentioned, Hughes has been very good for them. Um, I like where Oklahoma's at against the run right now. I think they're incredibly strong. I think they've done a really good job, and it's looked really like you wanted it to. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you've got guys in the middle, guys that have improved in big ways. Dejon Terry looks like a different person this year, and you add guys like Dominic Williams on the interior. Those guys have done a really good job allowing Danny Stutzman to run around and Kip Lewis, and they've been able to be really good against the run. So I think if Oklahoma can kind of dictate how Tulane tries to attack them and force them into longer downs and distance, I think Oklahoma's going to be okay on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, who knows? I'm not even going to try and predict it. Like we'll just have to see.
To me, I think offensively, I like everything you said. To me, I think the two things I'm really going to watch for is third down, which we covered. And I think the other thing is going to be time of possession.
Mm.
It was a big deal, obviously, against Houston. I mean, OU's offense didn't have the ball for 25 minutes, and they were able to kind of pad to that total late with a late drive. But I think they had the ball 17 minutes over the first three quarters. And this is a Tulane offense, Brian. I'm looking at the stats right now. Their time of possession against Southeastern Louisiana was 30 minutes and 13 seconds. Against Kansas State, it was 33 minutes and 11 seconds.
Mm.
So the recipe for disaster is a Tulane offense that can be explosive, staying on the field. So if you're OU's offense, I've been saying they've got to slow down. Slow down. Use tempo when it is genuinely advantageous, but I don't think that should be the default. I think OU needs to try to establish the running game and keep. And I'm not saying OU needs to hold the ball for 40 minutes, but it cannot be a 35-25 split. The main reason why they didn't kill OU last weekend is because Houston isn't very good. If
Right.
Tulane's offense has the ball for 35 minutes, they will lose.
Yep.
So that is just as much on the offense as it is the defense. OU has to sustain drives and get the running game going. And then defensively, for me, it's, and you mentioned Brent said they pushed the ball down the field. I was looking at explosive play stats. So Tulane has 36 plays of 10 yards or more. That's tied for 19th in the country. Fun fact, you want to know how many plays of 10 yards or more Oklahoma has? Just for fun?
No.
You want to be depressed?
Uh,
24. Sorry. I should have let you guess. 24. That ranks 87th. So not great. Plays of 20 yards or more. Plays of 30 yards or more. Tulane has 7, which is tied for 15th. Oklahoma has, you want to guess how many plays of 30 yards or more Oklahoma has?
4.
5.
Oh, sorry, I shortchanged them.
Yeah, you were way off. God. But this is a Tulane offense that is explosive, that can threaten OU down the field. I'm sure this will be fun for OU fans. For Tulane, Mario Williams has 10 catches for 252 yards. Team lead, averaging 25 yards a catch.
Mm.
So I think if you're OU's offense, you got to be able to sustain drives, get the running game going against a defense that is susceptible to the run, and defensively, you cannot let Tulane get explosive plays on you. And that's going to be a challenge because Houston didn't even want to do that. Houston was never going to try to push the ball down the field. They wanted to chew up the clock.
Yep.
This is a Tulane offense that can chew up the clock and sustain drives, and they can also throw it over the top. They can do both.
Yes, they present much more of an issue offensively than Houston did. Technically, I think they're better defensively too, but that's not what you want to hear right now, if you're an Oklahoma fan. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think you're spot on though. That is that's a really good way of looking at what Oklahoma's going to try and do um, against them because if you're not able to keep the ball, like you said, they don't need to keep the ball for 40 minutes, but you cannot lose the time of possession by 10 minutes in this game. You'll be in big trouble if you're Oklahoma.
No, and the reason why, look, Tulane held the advantage 33-26 in time of possession, but the reason why they lost that game was because of turnovers.
Yep.
That's the reason why they lost.
Yep.
Take those turnovers. If you watch that game, anybody that watched that game, I mean, Tulane was up 20-10 at halftime for a reason. I watched most of the first half and all of the second half, and to me, I didn't come away from that thinking Kansas State was a better team. I came away from that thinking they took advantage of
Yep.
mistakes.
Yep.
But
Agreed.
Tulane competed with them. I thought athlete for athlete, scheme for scheme, talent for talent. I don't think there was that big of a gap.
No.
And I don't know how great Kansas State is yet, but I think they're good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a couple of plays where Avery Johnson made something happen that most teams probably wouldn't be able to have at quarterback. But I mean that scoop and score for Kansas State was that was it. That was the game. That switched everything about that game on its head. That flipped everything. So Tulane should be 2-0 coming into Norman. Really, if I watched the game and I agree with you. They should have been 2-0. Let it slip away. So yeah, it's a good ball club. This is definitely the most difficult team Oklahoma's faced to this point by landslide.
I think Oklahoma's going to win. I think I've gone back. Honestly, I've gone back and forth. I think Oklahoma's going to win. But I'd be shocked if this isn't a good game. I'd be shocked if this isn't a close game. If it isn't and OU wins comfortably, that is a huge positive.
Yeah.
And part of my skepticism is just I think there's structural things this offense has to get fixed, not to mention the injury problems.
Yeah.
And if they let the same things happen against Houston, if they let those happen against Tulane, they will lose. And the OU's defense could carry the load. And I think the defense is obviously going to need to make plays, but I don't think the defense is going to hold Tulane to 12 points. I think OU's offense is going to have to put up points. And that's where my skepticism comes. I think OU wins in a close one.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think my pick would be something like 27-20, something like that. Like if I had to pick, I would say Oklahoma like 27-20. I don't necessarily feel super confident in them covering, but I do think that they have the pieces to get it done. The issue is this is a Willie Fritz team. It's not, it's Summerall there now, but Willie Fritz built this team, and they're hard nosed. A lot of guys coming back from last year's squad that's known a lot of success, and they're not going to come in here and bow down to Oklahoma. So it's going to be tough. But yeah, I think Oklahoma gets it done. It's another sigh of relief game, kind of feels like, and then pressure starts to build, man, because after that it's time for the gauntlet.
I think that's going to do it for us here on this episode of the Oklahoma Drill. Appreciate everybody again throwing your hot takes for us to use here on the Oklahoma Drill. Make sure if you want to throw in your own hot takes for the next time we do this, head on over to ouinsider.com. Become a VIP member today. Make sure to like and subscribe here at this OU Insider YouTube channel. Again, this game this weekend is at 2:30 Central on Saturday. ESPN or ESPN2, we will have you covered with video here on the website. We'll have you covered with stories on the website at ouinsider.com. No better place to get all kinds of recruiting and team intel than here with us at OU Insider. We'll be with you this weekend, and we'll see you next week on the Oklahoma Drill.